Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Moss, and in this video I want to show you how to use the GitLab Flow in a GitLab project. If you haven't watched my last video on the GitLab Flow, I would encourage you to watch that first because it explains conceptually how the GitLab Flow works, and then this video we actually will perform the GitLab Flow inside of GitLab. All you'll need to follow along with the tutorial is a GitLab account and a blank GitLab project. In the last video I explained that there are two versions of the GitLab Flow. There's one with environment branches and another with release branches. And in this video, we're going to perform the GitLab Flow with environment branches. If you do find this video valuable, please consider throwing a like on the video and subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. So with that, let's get started with the GitLab Flow. Okay, so I'm currently logged into my GitLab account and I'm inside of the project, the GitLab project, that I want to use to demonstrate the GitLab Flow. And this project is basically a blank GitLab project. There's really nothing in it except a single README.md file, and there's not really much in the README file. So what we're going to do when we perform the GitLab Flow is simply modifying the README file. So there's no code associated with it. We'll be focusing entirely on how to perform the GitLab Flow. And this project isn't completely configured for the GitLab Flow yet. We actually have to make a couple of changes to the configuration of this GitLab project before we're ready to perform the GitLab Flow. The first configuration change are the branches. So right now we only have the main branch. So we have a single branch in the repository, and that is the main branch. So what we'll want to do is create an environment branch. Now, it's possible to create multiple environment branches, but what we'll do is we'll treat the main branch as a pre-production environment. And then we'll create one additional long-lived branch, and we will call that the production branch. And the production branch will represent the production environment. Okay, so I'm going to call it production, and we'll create it from the main branch, and I'll select create branch. So now you can see that we're currently checked out to the production branch, and I'll switch back to the main branch. And the other configuration change that we need to make is in the settings of the repository. I mentioned in the last video that when we're promoting changes up through environments, so from pre-production branches into the production environment, that those merges are fast forward merges. So we don't create merge commits when we're merging into higher level environments. But the default behavior in GitLab is that when you create a merge request between branches and you merge a branch into another branch, it creates a merge commit. So we need to modify the settings of the repository to perform only fast forward merges. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the settings of the repository, and then I'm going to select general settings. And I'll scroll down to the merge request section. And then we can select the merge method. So we can determine what happens to the commit history when you merge a merge request. And the merge method that's currently selected is merge commit. So every merge will create a merge commit. And the second method will also create a merge commit, but with a semi-linear history. The one that we're going to select is fast forward merge. So it will create fast forward merges only, and then when there's a merge conflict, the user is prompted to rebase changes locally. Okay, so I'm going to select fast forward merge. And after selecting the desired merge method, I'll scroll down and I will select save. So we'll save those changes and then navigate back to the repository. And by using the fast forward merge method, we're avoiding creating merge commits on higher level environment branches that would need to be merged into lower level environment branches. So we're following the upstream first policy where changes are happening in lower level environments first and then merged into higher level environment branches. So before we make any changes to the repository, let's take a look at the current history of the repository. So if I go to the repository subsection and then the graph page, I can see a graphical version of the repository history. So right now there are 2 commits in the repository, and the main branch and the production branch are both pointing to this commit. Now technically the GitLab flow begins with the creation of an issue, because work comes from either a GitLab issue or a Jira issue. A customer or another developer or stakeholder creates an issue that represents a work item. It might be a feature, it might be a bug, or some other type of issue, but the workflow should begin with the creation of an issue. So I'm going to create an issue, and to do that, I'm going to navigate to the issues subsection, and we'll click on the subsection, and then I'll select new issue. And we'll call this issue update the project README. And we'll keep it as an issue, but we could select an incident type as well. Now the description field in the issue actually supports Markdown syntax, so we can use Markdown syntax for headers and then preview what that Markdown will look like. I could do a bulleted list as well. Okay, so we could use Markdown syntax. We can also use something called quick actions, where we can perform operations like GitLab operations from within the description field. So for the description field, I'm going to remove this header, and in the bulleted list, I'll say update README to include what you do for work and your name. Okay. So I think that's good enough for this issue, so I'm going to scroll down. And for the assignees, I can assign it to myself since I will be making the changes. I can also assign a weight and a due date. If I were, doing like agile sprints, for instance, I could assign like story points essentially. I can associate it with a milestone or add a label, and a label is kind of like a tag. Like if I could have a label for bugs, I could have a label for feature requests, etc. So I'm going to select create issue. So now we've created an issue that outlines work that needs to be done, and it's assigned to myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate back to the repository, and under the plus sign here, I'm going to select new branch. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a feature branch following the first step of the GitLab flow, and I'm going to call it feature, and we're going to create it from the main branch. So I'll select create branch. Now we can create the branch locally on our machine after cloning the repository, or we can create it in the UI. I chose to create it in the UI, but it's totally up to you whether you want to create it in the UI or locally after we clone the repository. But what I'm going to do now is I am going to clone it to my local machine so that we can make changes on the feature branch. So if you plan on cloning the repository, make sure that you either have an SSH key pair set up and the public key added to your GitLab profile, or you have a personal access token that you can use to clone the repository using the HTTPS protocol. In my case, I have an SSH key pair already set up, and so I'm going to use the SSH URL to clone it down locally. So I'm going to select copy URL, and I'm going to navigate to my terminal, and I'm in the directory that I want to clone the repository down. So I'm going to say git clone, and then I'm going to paste the URL here, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so now that we've cloned down the repository, let's navigate into the repository directory. And if I do a git status, let's check the branch that we're currently checked out to. And what you'll notice is that even though we created the feature branch, we're checked out to the main branch. And that's because the main branch is the default branch. So anytime you set a particular branch to be the default branch in a GitLab project, when you clone the GitLab project, you'll be checked out automatically to the default branch. And when you open merge requests as well, the merge request will automatically, the target branch will automatically be set to the default branch. But we don't want to modify the README file on the main branch because the main branch represents a pre-production environment. So we want to check out to the feature branch. So I'm going to use git checkout and then feature. And now we're checked out to the feature branch. We have a local branch called feature that's set up to track the remote feature branch from origin, which is origin is just a variable resolving to the URL of our GitLab project. So now that we're checked out to the feature branch, we can begin modifying the README file. And to modify the README file, you can use any editor that you prefer, Notepad or VS Code. I'm going to open it up in Vim. So I'm going to Vim README.md. And below the first header in the README file, I'm going to put a bullet. And what I do will be, so I'm going to put job. I'll say that I'm a DevOps engineer. And then my name is Moss. Okay. So those were the two things that were outlined in the issue, and that was the work that needed to be done inside of the README file. So I'm going to go ahead and save and quit the README file. And after closing the file, I'm going to do a git status. And from here, I can see that the README file is in the working directory. So I want to add it to the staging area. I'll do a git diff to check what I've changed in the file. And then I will do a git add README. Okay. So let's do a git status again. And I can see that the changes in the README file are now staged. So they're ready to be committed. So I'm going to say git commit. And then I will add my commit message in line. And I will say adding my name and job to the README file. Okay. Now the next step is to sync our changes between the local and remote repository. So the remote repository being the repo in GitLab, and the local repository being the one on my machine. Remember that Git is a distributed version control system, so changes that we make locally are not immediately in sync with what's in the remote repository. If I take a look at GitLab right now, I'm currently checked out to the feature branch, and if I refresh the page, those changes that we made to the README file do not show up in the README file, right? But if I were to cat the README file locally and I'm on the feature branch, I can see the changes that I just made. So we need to synchronize our local and remote repository, and to do that, in order to sync changes from the local repository to the remote repository, we have to use the git push command, and that will push all of our local commits that we've made to the remote repository. So I'm going to say git push, and it shows us from the remote we have a message that says that we can create a merge request for the feature branch, and it shows us that we've updated the feature branch. So if I navigate back to GitLab and I refresh the page, now I can see my changes that were locally, they're now in GitLab on the feature branch, the remote feature branch. Now I don't think there's anything else that we need to do locally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate back to GitLab, and what we're going to do is open up a merge request from the feature branch to the main branch, which the main branch represents our pre-production environment. So if I scroll up here, you can see you pushed to feature just now, and I can create a merge request. So I'm going to select create merge request. And in the merge request form, I can fill out a title, a description, I can assign it to people. I can assign reviewers for the merge requests. And you can see under here that it says approvals are optional. But if in the free tier of GitLab, I believe, approvals are always optional. So you can't have required approvals. But in paid tiers of GitLab, I believe you can require approvals where if someone is assigned as a reviewer, they have to approve the merge request before the merge request can be merged. You can also associate the merge request with milestones or labels. So if this merge request is fixing a bug, you might have a bug label that you would associate with this merge request. Another cool thing below labels is merge request dependencies. So if there's other merge requests that this merge request is dependent on to be merged, you can list those merge requests here, and they will be referenced in the merge request after you create it. And under merge options, you can select to delete the source branch when the merge request is accepted, and you can also squash commits when the merge request is accepted as well. So let's say I had 5 or 10 commits on the feature branch. After merging the feature branch into the main branch, or before merging rather, it would squash those 10 commits into a single commit. So all of the changes that were included in those 10 commits, it would squash them into a single commit, and that single commit would be what is included on the target branch. And below the create merge request button, we can also view the commits associated with the merge request and see a diff of changes as well. So this shows me the diff of the README file, and if there were more files changed, those would be shown here as well. I can do an inline diff or a side-by-side diff, which will show me the old version of the file and the new version side by side. I'm going to leave it as an inline diff. Also, I'd like you to notice at the top, it says from feature into main. So we're merging changes from the feature branch into the main branch. We didn't have to select the main branch as the target branch. And why is that? It's because the main branch is the default branch. So it automatically selected it as the target branch when we created a new merge request. The default value of the title field in the merge request is the commit message. And for this case, it's fine, but you might want to modify if there were multiple commits or an entire feature included in the merge request. You might want to modify the title to not be the default value. And similar to the issues description field, the description field in the merge request form also allows you to use markdown syntax or quick actions. So in the description, you would just want to outline everything that was included, all of the changes you would want to summarize in the description. I'm going to leave the description field blank. And then for the reviewers, I'm going to select myself as the reviewer since there's no one else in this project. And then I'm going to select create merge request. Now, after creating the merge request, you're taken to the merge request page, which gives you these 3 tabs: the overview tab, the commits tab, and the changes tab. The overview tab gives you an overview of the activity that's happened with this merge request. And if someone, makes changes to the merge request, those changes will show up in the overview tab. And this is also where you would have a conversation about your changes. You would have them in the overview tab. So if I scroll down, I can add comments. So if I were the reviewer, I could add additional comments, or I can actually request changes as well from this particular tab. If I navigate to the commits page, I can see a list of all of the commits that are included in this merge request. And then in the changes page, I can see a diff of the changes comparing the main branch with the latest version of the branch associated with this merge request, which is the feature branch. So as the reviewer, I would want to navigate to the changes tab and review all of the changes that are included in this merge request. And in this case, there's only one file that was changed and a couple of lines that were added to that one file. If I had any comments or suggestions on the changes that were included in this merge request, I can actually add an inline comment to request changes on a single line or multiple lines. So if I wanted to make a multi-line comment, I would hover over here and then I would drag that down to both lines. And you can see commenting on lines 3 to 4. And then as the reviewer, I'll request a simple change to the README file. I'll say, looks great. Can you add activities that you like to do in your spare time? Okay, so I'll add that comment or start a review. In this case, I'll select start a review and then I'll select submit review. Now, when I start a review, this becomes a thread that needs to be resolved, and you can actually configure the repository to not allow merge requests until all reviews are resolved. So as the developer, I would want to make the requested changes, and then I would select resolve thread after making those changes. I could add a reply as well, explaining, how I made the suggested changes as well. So now switching roles back to the developer, I would have received feedback on my merge requests. And in this case, there are requested changes. So I need to modify the README file to include some additional information. So I can either modify the README file locally on my machine, or I can modify it directly in the GitLab UI. What I'm going to do is modify the README file locally, and then I'll push those changes up. So what happens when, after opening a merge request for a feature branch, when you make additional changes on that feature branch, if there is an open merge request for that feature branch, any new changes that are pushed up to the repository will automatically be associated with the merge request. So I'm going to navigate back to my terminal, and I'm going to open the README file in Vim. And below the name section, I'm going to list activities. And I will add biking and video games to my activities. Okay. And I will save and quit. Let's do a git status. I'll add those changes to the staging area. And then I will commit my changes using an inline commit message. Okay. So now I'm going to push that commit up to GitLab. Alrighty. And notice the response from the remote. It says view merge request for feature branch. So in the previous, when we pushed up our changes previously, there was no merge request for the feature branch. And here it lets us know that, there is a merge request already for the feature branch. So in the overview tab of the merge request, if I scroll down, you can see the latest commit that was pushed to the feature branch is now associated with this merge request. Okay, so if I look at the commits tab and a refresh, there's now 2 commits in the commits tab, and I can see my latest changes to the README file. So below the comment from the reviewer, you can see the latest line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to resolve that thread since we added activities, and I'll navigate back to the overview tab. So now I think our feature branch is ready to be merged into our pre-production environment, which is represented by the main branch. So what I'm going to do is navigate down here to where it says merge, and under the merge button, notice how it says fast forward merge without a merge commit. Okay, so I'm going to keep this selected so it will delete the source branch after merging, and then I'll select merge. And it says my changes were merged into the main branch and the source branch has been deleted. And let's take a look at the graphical view of the repository history now. So if I select graph, you can see in the graph of commits, we have this linear line. There's no merge commit where we merge the feature branch changes into the main branch. And then on top of that, we have the production branch, which is pointing to an older commit. So now what we need to do is we need to open a merge request from the pre-production environment branch, the main branch, to the production branch representing the production environment. So from here, I'll navigate to the merge request section, and we are going to select create new merge request. And it says select source branch, and I'm going to select the main branch. And the target branch is currently selected as the main branch, but we want this to be the production branch since we're promoting changes to the production environment. And then I'll select compare branches and continue. For the title of the merge request, I'll say including additional information on README.md. And I will assign myself as a reviewer, and then we'll select create merge request. And if you remember from the previous video, as we promote changes up through environments, our scope of testing becomes more broad. So I have that diagram pulled up, and you can see here on the y-axis, in the feature branch, in the CI/CD pipeline for the feature branch, we would have unit testing done, and then as we promote those changes to the pre-production environment, we would have integration tests running on the pre-production environment, and then we'd also have like smoke testing done, UI testing done at those higher level environment branches, okay? But we're not going to mess around with CI/CD pipelines in this video. We're just going to focus on the workflow. But if you'd like to see a CI/CD pipeline video, please let me know in the comments, and I will definitely consider that for a future video. So for this merge request where we're merging the main branch into the production branch, ideally there would be some sort of CI/CD pipeline running right now verifying our changes. And we would want to wait until those changes have been verified through automated testing. And if that pipeline were to pass, then we would merge our branch into the production branch and cut a new release for our product. We'll assume that our pipeline passed in this case, and you'll notice again that it says this will perform a fast forward merge without a merge commit, and I'll go ahead and select merge. Okay, and you can see that the main branch was merged into the production branch. And if we take a look at the graph of the repository, you can see that now the production branch is pointing to the latest commit in the repository, the same as the main branch. Now that we've promoted our changes to the production environment, we would want to sync those changes with our local repository. So if I navigate back to terminal, I would perform a git pull to sync changes from the remote repository to the local repository, okay? And you'll notice in the return message, it says your configuration specifies to merge with the feature branch, which no longer exists. So what I'll want to do from here is check out to the main branch, okay? And I will do a git pull again because we need to still merge the local main branch with the remote branch after doing a git pull. Okay, and now that fast forwarded our local main branch to be the same as our remote main branch. So if I were to do git log -- one line, and then we will do -- all here, we can see that the main branch is, the local main branch is pointing to the remote main branch. Also, it's worth noting that the local repository still thinks that there is a remote feature branch, and then we also have this local feature branch highlighted in green. So what we would want to do is remove those branches since they're short-lived. We only want to keep the long-lived branches, which is the production branch and the main branch. And to delete the remote feature branch reference, we can use the git pull command, but with the -- prune option, and that will remove this remote branch reference right here. So I'm going to do git pull -- prune, and you can see here in the return message it says deleted origin feature. So if I were to do git log one line again, you can see that origin feature remote branch reference no longer exists. But we still have the local feature branch, which also needs to be deleted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that using git branch -d and then the name of the branch. And it says that it deleted the feature branch. And I'll do git branch -- all to check what branches we have. And so now our repository is fully up to date with what's in the remote, and we removed the remote feature branch reference and deleted the short-lived local feature branch. That's pretty much all there is to the GitLab flow. It's actually pretty close to the GitHub flow if you're familiar with that workflow in GitHub. But the version of the GitLab flow that I showed in this video, it's not restrictive. You can modify it as needed. If you need additional environment branches, I only showed the main branch and the production branch, but if you need additional environment branches, you can modify it. You can modify the workflow as needed to fit your team's requirements. But this would be kind of a starting point, and then you can modify it from there. And it's worth noting that this doesn't just apply to GitLab. You could use this workflow in GitHub as well, and other source code management systems. I don't think that this workflow, this Git workflow, is restricted to only GitLab. Although I think GitLab has some features that might suit this workflow more than other source code management systems. But I think that you could use this in other source code management systems as well. And also remember that the version of the GitLab flow that I showed here is the version using environment branches. I did not illustrate the version that uses release branching. If you'd like to see a version with release branching, please let me know in the comments, and I'll consider doing a video on release branching, the GitLab flow with release branching in a future video. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it valuable. If you did, please consider throwing a like on the video and subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them below in the comments, and thanks for watching.